Namaste and welcome. Today I will be reading a response to a question about the hidden value of not knowing. This question reads, I find I am approaching the hidden value of not knowing with an intellectual approach and attempt to quantify it in some way in order to reproduce it. The intellectual approach doesn't work. Can you please describe the process of finding the stillness of God in the midst of hell, focusing on the experience of it, how it was sensed and perceived? Thank you for your question. It is why I chose to write The Hidden Value of Not Knowing, to try and describe this process. It is true that the hidden value of not knowing is not a method or a mental process. In short, the true hidden value is the stillness of God. The process of not knowing is like a gateway, because the mind will never be satisfied with not knowing. Even the phrase not knowing is not what we imagine it to be. It is simply a pointing to what is beyond the edges of the mind. God's stillness is always here, beneath all that we know of and all that we see. We do not perceive God's stillness. God's stillness is earlier than our perception. He illuminates our vision. We can perceive only what we can see, what we can know of, and all that we see can leave. To recognize the smallest, most subtle thing that we can see is a form of meditation and will reveal a stillness and a quiet presence. But to recognize your own self as the source of seeing itself, that all of perception, all of consciousness even, exists inside of you. This is true freedom and unshakable stillness, a never-ending meditation. This is also your direct inner connection to God. You write, can you please describe the process of finding the stillness of God in the midst of hell, focusing on the experience of it? This is very much in the beginning of my writing, in the story of a moment of extreme pain, watching as each layer of ordinary human experience can vanish before you in an instant. If even your own eyesight and consciousness can fail before you, you, the true you, is what always remains. Already now you can speak about consciousness, and you can even speak about unconsciousness, but rarely do we question how or why that is. Rarely do we make such an immediate inquiry. What remains when consciousness fails is pure immediacy. Your earliest immediacy is the only one who remains here with you, as you, all the times. If I were going to offer anyone a method or a process, or even a method of pain management, it would remain a mental practice, and any mental practice becomes instantly and totally useless the moment pain arises. In great pain, it does not even exist. The method and the practice no longer exist. And the greater love and truth is that you do not need them. How can I offer you something that can leave you and that you do not need? You have also written to me that sometimes you find yourself reading a passage from this book and staring off into space or gazing at the wall for long periods of time. Of course, the mind would prefer some action steps, something to remember, something to hold on to, something to do. Often I see what you're saying, Shruti, but how do I do it? But I am not avoiding this question. I might suggest even that these moments of gazing at the wall are far more valuable than answering this question. In those moments of nothing, you perceive without the influence of the mind. It's only later on that the mind will label those times of nothing as a trance, as useless, as empty, as nothing, maybe even as dead space. But when the mind is not here to label anything, and you simply exist here without it, is anything wrong? Do you need to do anything in order to exist? Can these times of nothing become an opening to a deeper questioning and an encouragement to let go further? You do not need the mind to move or to do, and you do not need to do anything for the stillness of God. To move from beyond the mind is to experience the movement of God's unconditional love, and to make decisions from the natural impulse of life itself. It is like watching a garden grow. You do not make the flowers bloom. You do not grow that garden. You watch as the garden flourishes under your care and attention. Explaining the process of finding God is a little like drawing a diagram about how the flowers grow, but following the inner pointings to look inside to see what it is truly about your own self that can never leave you. This is like planting the flowers and watching them grow. You do not need to understand how the flowers grow in order to watch them and enjoy their beauty. The highest value of this writing for you is that you become free of the words, that you do not need to quote them, to remember them, to reread the story, that you find yourself as the result of those words already, that you do not need them, and you do not even need me. If you take in the heart of the words, then we do not need words to meet directly. By finding God from the inside, then you are free. Free from the world, free from everyone and everything. But also, you might just find that you meet yourself in all of the beings and in all of the world. You might see that you do not end, that you are more than the ends and the edges of your body, that you are environmental, that you are loved because you know love as the fabric of all that you see, and all that you see is that God is here, in everything, as everything. Even pain is not what we imagine it to be. We fear that pain means we are wrong or bad or broken. We fear that we are lost or helpless or weak. We fear that we are worthless or unlovable. But the highest purpose of pain is like anything else in this life. It is here to set you free. From page 150 of The Hidden Value of Not Knowing. If we are who we think we are, then we will overlook the peace in our pain. This empty space, this black hole, looks like a harsh and dead end. But what if the gravity of that harshness pulls us away from the mind's perception, the one that feels pain and tends to become cold and filled with dread? What if when we venture further into unknown darkness, we find that we are filled with a dancing celebration for the lightness of that love within? Are we willing to look at pain more closely for its true purpose? Can we use pain as an internal detour, like the detour away from the mesa and into this seeming dead space that actually reveals itself to be a meadow of reverberating light? Can we see that pain is pointing us directly to that light within us? Like the hesitation in entering the abandoned courtyard, do we see only piles of old construction parts, and so miss the glorious view of the flight of the dragonflies just beyond them? This most glorious view is God's view, and it is waiting in our internal unknown. Only in looking out through God's view do the limitations of time and form collapse, where, as this space, time does not move us, and we are watching any lingering pain as the light that is reflecting on these many delicate wings in flight. We are beyond but not above, finding that we are at once nowhere, but also embedded everywhere, by diving deeper inside of our own vision. When we have lost the old perspective of the mind, we are found. We are seeing with the earliest sight that belongs to everyone and that knows itself only with deepest reverence and as highest love. Come home and be free in the midst of everything, God is the only one who is never waiting, never needing, never changing. God is much kinder than the human mind. From His eyes, you are already more free than you can even imagine. Why ask only for small solutions? Ask for the ultimate solution. No matter what arises before you, stay as the one who can never leave you. I love you now and always.